Did you know that something as simple and common as salt can be a powerful weapon in spiritual warfare? In this video, we're going to reveal incredible secrets about the power of salt and how it can transform your life. Are you ready to discover how this mineral can help you break curses and attract blessings of abundance into your life? Stay with me because you're going to be amazed by everything you're going to learn here. The revelation about salt. Let's begin with a powerful truth. Everything was created by God, through Him and for Him. Nothing exists outside of His will. And this includes salt. Have you ever stopped to think that God created salt with a specific purpose? There is nothing, absolutely nothing in this world that hasn't been made by God's mighty hand. The salt that you use every day has a spiritual and profound purpose. From the very beginning in Genesis, we read, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." Salt, being a mineral, was created right at the start of creation. And more than that, it was created with a power that throughout history has often been underestimated. Many of us don't even imagine how powerful salt can be when used according to God's will. Did you know that the church rarely speaks about the power of salt? It's as if this element is ignored, but God, in His infinite wisdom, created salt with a very specific purpose. It is one of the elements of creation that holds spiritual authority. Just as fire has the authority to consume everything it touches, and water has the power to give life, salt was created to preserve and purify. It's important to understand that from the very beginning, God did not create anything without purpose. Every element has a divine mission, and salt, being a simple substance, carries with it immeasurable spiritual depth. When Jesus said we are the salt of the earth, He showed us that just as salt preserves and gives flavor, we too should be instruments of preservation and transformation in this world. Salt, then, is not just something physical. It carries a symbolism of power, authority, and responsibility that must be understood and applied in the life of every Christian. The authority of salt. That's right, salt has the authority to purify. It is a tool in the hands of the Almighty. Imagine this. In a world where everything has a divine purpose, salt is not here by chance. It has the ability to preserve and strengthen our faith in times of trial, just as it preserves food. When we use salt with faith and reverence, we are releasing the authority God has assigned to it over our lives. It acts symbolically, but also very real in our spiritual journey. Salvation, purification, protection, all of these are represented by the power of salt. Now, I want to take a quick pause. If you have ever used salt at any point in your life to pray or seek God's help, leave your experience in the comments. Many of you feel inspired and strengthened when hearing the testimonies of other Christians. I know there may be someone here who found relief or even healing through the use of salt. Share your story, because it could change someone's life as they watch. Furthermore, salt teaches us a powerful lesson about God's character. He is eternal and unchanging, just like salt. In Leviticus 2:13, we see that God commands all offerings to be seasoned with salt. This salt of the covenant is a reminder that God's covenant with us is firm, enduring, and unbreakable. When we use salt with spiritual understanding, we are reaffirming this covenant, asking God to purify our lives and consecrate our hearts. It wasn't placed here just to season food, but to fulfill a divine purpose, preserving the spiritual life of those who seek Him. Therefore, salt is a symbol of our obedience to God, and by using it, we reinforce divine authority over our lives and the spiritual world around us. The history of salt in the past. Let's now go back to ancient times. What did you know about the use of salt? In many cultures, salt was seen as a precious commodity. In ancient Rome, for example, it wasn't just used to season food, but also as currency. That's right. Public servants were paid in salt, and the word salary comes from the word salt. Salt was valued because it had power. It wasn't just seen as something simple, it had value. And in the Bible, When we look at the scriptures, we see that salt is mentioned in many ways. Jesus, for example, said, "You are the salt of the earth." What did he mean by that? Salvation, preservation, authority. He wasn't talking about something trivial. Salt has a much greater spiritual importance than you might think. In the Bible, salt also holds great importance. It was used to establish covenants, as in 2 Chronicles 13:5, where we see God saying that he established a covenant of salt with David and his descendants. This phrase shows the value and stability of the commitment. Salt symbolized the eternal covenant between God and his people. It wasn't just a sign of preservation, but also of purity and sacred commitment. In ancient times, when two people met to make a covenant, they often shared salt as a sign of friendship and loyalty. This custom shows that by sharing salt, they were committing to keep their word and not betray each other. Thus, salt became a symbol of fidelity and covenant, representing not only the preservation of life, but also the firmness in the commitments made. But here's something interesting. Some people today have a wrong idea about salt. Some associate it with black magic and dark rituals. They believe salt is a tool used for evil. But that's a lie from the enemy. The enemy wants to deceive us and take away the truth about salt. Remember what Jesus taught us in John 10. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. The enemy wants us to be afraid of salt's power, but instead we must understand that salt is a spiritual weapon God gave us. The spiritual use of salt. Did you know that salt plays a very important role in the Christian faith? And what about salt's power in spiritual purification? In many parts of the Bible, we see salt being used symbolically and spiritually. For example, in the Old Testament, we see the use of anointing oil, which was commanded by God to anoint the priests and sacred objects. The oil didn't have power in itself, but it was the obedience to God in the spiritual rituals that brought the blessing. If God commands us to anoint with oil, we must do so with faith. The same goes for salt. Salt, just like oil, has a sacred purpose when used properly. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." We cannot let the enemy steal this truth from us. If salt has the power to preserve, purify, and bless, why not use this powerful weapon for our spiritual life? In the Bible, we see salt used to purify, consecrate, and even drive out evil. In 2 Kings 2:19-22, for example, the prophet Elisha uses salt to purify the waters of a city, healing the land of barrenness. This act of purification wasn't just physical, but it had deep spiritual significance. Elisha used salt as a means of restoring God's blessing over that place, showing that God has the power to transform what is corrupted or barren, whether physically or spiritually. Similarly, in our lives, when we consecrate salt to God and use it with faith, we are asking Him to purify our hearts, our homes, and even our cities, bringing blessings and removing curses. Salt, thus, becomes a powerful symbol of spiritual restoration, acting as a cleansing agent that connects us directly to God's authority. Testimonies and the power of salvation. And I want to share with you another powerful example. When you use salt with faith, you are acknowledging God's power in your life. Let me tell you about a sister who used salt in prayer and had a miraculous change in her life. She didn't believe that something as simple as salt could have such an impact, but by consecrating the salt to God, she experienced a power she never imagined. If you have a similar story, share it in the comments, because your testimony could help someone who needs a word of faith and encouragement. Now let's reflect a bit more. In the Bible, salt is not just a physical element, it is used as a symbol of covenant, of pact with God. In Leviticus 2, for example, we see that salt was placed on the offerings to purify. This means that salt, when used in the right way, can be a means of spiritual purification in our lives. What you might not know is that many people have experienced incredible transformations in their lives by using salt with faith and reverence. There are stories of people who, by anointing their homes or praying with consecrated salt, saw their finances change, their families restored, and even diseases disappear. The sister I mentioned earlier, for example, had her life completely transformed after using salt in prayer, seeking consecration and purification. She testified about how, after this simple but faith-filled act, her spiritual life was strengthened and many of the challenges she faced began to be broken. This shows us that the power of salt goes beyond the physical. It is a spiritual key that, when used with the right heart, opens doors for God's action. It's not just a ritual or tradition, but a true declaration of faith where salt becomes a symbol of divine intervention and the renewal of our covenant with God. I invite you to also experience this power and witness the change it can bring to your life. Now, you understand that salt is much more than a simple kitchen condiment. It is a powerful spiritual weapon given by God to help in our faith journey. When used with reverence, salt has the power to purify, preserve, and even break curses. If you were surprised by the power of salt and want to learn more about how to apply it spiritually in your life, don't forget to leave your like below and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the upcoming videos with revelations like this. And to continue learning more about these spiritual secrets, click on the next video that's appearing on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching, and may God bless you powerfully. See you in the next video.